Hello there, I'm Neil, also known as the Hairy Man, and I'm going to be reviewing some of the miniatures from the Nolzors Marvelous Miniatures unpainted line. So these are unpainted miniatures that are creatures from the Dungeons and Dragons and the Pathfinder role-playing games, but they'll fit in with most tabletop RPGs. So the ones I'm going to look at today are the Giant Ape, the Cloaker, the Hook Horror and the Bone Naga. So, starting out with the Giant Ape. Now, this is a huge mini, scale-wise, and it comes on a 3-inch base that you will glue to it, but it's actually mounted on a sculpted base. So, looking at it a little closer, there are some quite visible joint lines, particularly along the left arm and the neck, but that's quite easily fixed with some modelling putty, and because of the fur texture that's quite easy to blend in. Pose wise, the ape's in quite a classic aggression pose, on his hind legs beating his chest, very King Kong like, very dynamic. It's good, and the fur's got very good definition to it. Just doing the simple base coat, wash and dry brush will give very good results. Chest, face and hands are smoother, so a more subtle colour will allow for a realistic look to the skin, and the wide open mouth gives a nice contrast between the teeth and the very dark skin and fur. So moving on and looking at the Cloaker. So this is what is classed as a large miniature scale wise, so it comes on a base as standard, and taking a closer look at it, it's got a thick transparent flight base, and finish wise there's some very visible joints where the parts have been fitted together, particularly around the face and the forelimbs. Mould lines are also present on the wings, for want of a better word, and the tail, so this will need a bit of attention to detail. And because there's a lot of smooth areas on this model, you have to be quite careful with the way that you're painting it, because as you don't really have a lot of detail, hello cat, to bring out, so you've got to maybe blend slightly more, or to put character into those flat areas. So the Hook Horror miniature, this is a real classic from the Underdark Adventures, supplied again on a large base, and there is an absolute shed load of detail to this mini, but it will need a little bit of clean up on the arm, but this sculpt's very good for having a lot of detail, because the coloration, if you're painting it as the published material, it's very much lots of greys and browns and tans, and which it doesn't really make for a very interesting colour contrast. But again, because of the amount of detail, I'll getting the base coat down, putting in a wash to darken up the areas, and then just bringing up the highlight. With a dry brush will really get the most out of this. Will really get the most out of this model. And then finally we come on to the last miniature. Guaranteed to get a few more views because there's a cat in the video. And final miniature is the Bone Naga. Again, this is what is classed as a large miniature, and comes with a large base and a sculpted base. Now, the many rib-like bones in there will look good if you're using one of the contrast paints from Games Workshop, Skeleton Horde, or that really is as simple as just laying that down over most of the miniature, although you can get pretty much the same results for base coating it in an off-white colour and then going in with a wash. Gosh, now the biggest issue I've got with this model is the way that it's mounted onto the sculpted base. So around the base you've got the spine and the rib bones coming out, and I'll show a close up of it. As you can see, it's all very close to the sculpted base, so that makes it quite difficult to get underneath and actually put any detail onto the base. And then you've got the danger of sort of like the overspill from coming over when you're actually painting the main part of the miniature itself. Now my ideal solution to this would be to try to take the model off the sculpted base, so that I could paint the base, paint the model, and then just remount it and glue it in place. But I think the problem we're going to have with this is it's got a lot of very, very thin pieces to it, and it's quite securely mounted to the base, so I think that there is a danger of breaking that if you try to lever it off. And I have gone in there, tried to get a blade underneath, and it does not want to move. So we've spoken about the individual finishes of the model. All of the models come pre-undercoated, so that's one less job to do, although it can be a bit of a pain in the neck, because if you are one of these people that likes to do what's called a zenithal prime, which is where you prime the miniature in a darker colour and then you come in from above and you add a lighter colour which is supposed to put on a highlight of the sun at its zenith, hence the name zenithal highlighting or zenithal priming. And if you want to do that, then you are going to have a bit of a problem, because they've already put in the base undercoat in a sort of like a slightly off white. Right, but in my experience, these models take paint very well. And you can also do a certain amount of reposing of them, particularly if some of the aspects haven't cast very straight. Because what you can do with models that are in plastic like this is you can do something where you would dip the part into hot water. So normally I just boil a kettle, pour out a mug, and then dip the part in it. Then I will straighten it or repose it, and then run it under cold water to set it again, and which is a slightly easier thing than sort of like trying to bend a metal miniature and running the risk of snapping things off. So anyway, that's my thoughts on these particular models. I hope you found that helpful, and take care, and myself and the cat down here will see you again really soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.